Now here we are talking about xylem tissue and phloem tissue. And I said that a xylem tissue is made up of different types of cells. That's why it's called heterogeneous. Let's see what different types of cells are there in xylem tissue. Okay. It have tracheids, vessels, fibers, basically called as xylem fibers. Then parenchyma. This parenchyma specifically we call xylem parenchyma. Okay. So these are the different types of cells you will find in xylem tissue. Tracheids, vessels, fibers, parenchyma. Xylem fibers, xylem parenchyma particularly. So we are having 4 kinds of cells making up xylem tissue. That's why xylem is complex tissue. Okay. Clear with that? If you are clear with that, we will discuss in detail these 4 categories. Now if you see here, xylem is the tissue which transports water and nutrients. Okay. As I explained in the theory, water and nutrients will be taken up from the ground and they will move upward of the plant. Okay. So what is the tissue that is helping in this upward movement is the xylem tissue. Okay. Now when you take xylem tissue, you are having 2 types of conducting cells called tracheids and vessel elements. You see the tracheids. This is the basic structure of trachea and this is the basic structure of vessel element. Just observe the morphology, structural difference between these 2. Tracheids are somewhat narrow lumen cells with tips, tapering tips. Okay, but when you take vessel element, the vessel element is having broader lumen, broader space compared to trachea, and they doesn't have tapering ends. They're having broad ends. There's a structural difference between trachea and vessel. Other than that, both function in the same way. They help in transport of water and nutrients from bottom of the plant to the tip of the plant in one direction. See, the arrow mark indicates the transport of water and nutrients. That's why tracheids and vessels are called conducting cells. Conducting of what? Conducting of the water and the nutrients. Okay, conducting of water and the nutrients. So tracheids and vessels are the one which will conduct water and nutrients. Now here can you see a word pit? What is pit? Someone has to answer. We discussed this concept pit.
Ma'am, these are the non-lignified areas.
Yes, those are the gaps. So those are the gaps we'll find. See here, this is the gap area and between the cell. So those are called gaps. Now my question is, why there are gaps?
Ma'am, so that the water can pass sideways between one xylem vessel to another.
Any other answers? Any other answers?
Can you repeat your question, ma'am?
Why there are gaps in tracheids? There are gaps, we are saying pits, no? Why there are gaps in this cell?
Maybe to reduce the force of the water using ridges.
What happens if you reduce the force of water?
It's easier to transport.
If the pressure is high, then we can uplift the water more easily, no? If you reduce the force or pressure, then upliftment against gravity becomes tough, isn't it?
Okay.
Try another way. Think. I want other students to answer. Try to think. Answer is here only. Here only. Answer is here only. In this slide only. Just check the slide once properly. Are you people clear with my question? Why there are gaps? Why there are pits in the cells? Here also you can find pits. See, gaps are there. In tracheids and vessels also you are having pits. Why?
To block any debris.
Block any debris. No. Alifia Karani. Did I spell your name properly?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are giving good trial. Good, keep it up. I want some more trials. Other students. Bhumika, do you have any idea? No? Sahas?
Ma'am, to transport water in sideways.
Inside it. Oh, okay. That was already given as one of the answer. Other than that, I asked other than that. Arna said the same point, yeah. Okay. See here. Lignin. Can you see the word lignin here?
Yes, ma'am.
What is said lignin? What is lignin? Lignin you will find in the cell wall, which is a dead material and gives hard texture. Isn't it? Okay. So lignin is the one which gives impermeability at some places to the tracheid and vessel elements. Impermeability means
Can
what?
you repeat, please?
Lignin is the material you will find in tracheids and vessels. Okay. So in the cell, this is cell now. Tracheid is a cell, vessel is a cell. They'll have cell wall.
Yeah.
So in the cell wall, you'll have lignin. In Parenchyma, we discussed this. It's lignin is the material which you'll find in dead cells. So here, tracheids and vessel elements both are dead cells. Okay, so both are dead cells and they'll just help in the transport of water acting as tubes. That's all. Tracheid means what? Tube. Vessel means what? It's a container. They'll act as containers through which water and nutrients move from bottom to the top of the plant. Okay, so these are the cells which are dead and their cell wall is made up of lignin. So when cell wall is made up of lignin means what? It will not allow anything to pass. See, I told the example of lignin material in coconut shell. Why I discussed that much regarding that coconut hard shell is in order to compare with this point. So nothing can go through the lignin material, isn't it? That's why the coconut shell is protecting inside soft tissue material. That's what I discussed in Parenchyma, isn't it? So the same lignin material you will find in tracheids and vessels also. Okay, so this material will not allow free movement of water and nutrients. So there should be some gaps in the cell wall. That is nothing but pits. That's why you are having gaps in the cell wall. Because the cell wall of tracheids and vessels are made up of lignin and these two cells are dead cells. Yes.
So lignin.
Yes,
So
go ahead.
lignin basically plays a role of plaque, but then in plant cells, right?
Yes.
Vessels.
Yes. Exactly. Yes. Okay. So even though tracheids and vessels are dead cells, even Parenchyma is also dead cells. See. Okay. Even though they are dead cells, they act as containers or they act as vessels in transport of water and nutrients. Okay. So as they are dead cells, they have cell wall made up of lignin that will not allow movement of anything across it. So at some places you will have gaps. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
Because of these pits that are placed, the lignin material doesn't pass, right?
Yes.
So it comes back down. So isn't it difficult for the vessels to pull up the water?
No, I got your point. Yeah, here that's why I must explain descent of sap. What is pulling up the water? Is it the cell? Is it trachea or is it vessel? Is it lignin? No, no. What the force pulling up the water? What the theory is saying? What the force pulling up the water? Yes, answer.
I didn't understand what you said.
What is the force that is pulling up the water from soil to the plant? In the earlier theory, I explained, no, what is the force it is pulling up the water? Water is pulled up from soil root part to the plant parts. What is the force developed inside?
Ma'am, due to transpiration that occurs.
Water potential is the force. Because of the transpiration, water potential is developed, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
That is pulling up the water against gravity. Okay. Now, Alifia, your doubt is if we are having pits, does they hinder the transport of water? That's what you are asking now?
No, that's not what I'm asking.
That's what
I'm
you are
asking. No, I'm saying because of the pits, the lignin is blocked, right?
No. Lignin is the material you will find around the cells that blocks all the permeability inside the cell. So in between the lignin cell wall material, you will have gaps so that there will be free flow of water and nutrients. Okay.
So between the lignin, there are the pits, right?
Lignin, lignin. Where the lignin you won't see, those are the pits. See here. There's no lignin here. It is clear area. Here lignin is there. It is closed area. Okay. Now, what's your doubt?
So, ma'am, this area which is removed, this is the pit.
Yes. Exactly. Likewise, you will find different gaps, various pits. Okay. For the flow of water. Okay. Now here the point you have to understand is the flow of water is not at all related to the cell, trachea or vessel. Okay, I'm repeating, tracheas and vessels both are dead cells. They will not perform any function actively, but they act as containers. Okay, through which the water will pass, through which the nutrients will transport from soil to the pit. Okay, so how the water is passing or the nutrients are passing through these dead cells is that's explained in the theory. That's why I explained the theory first. Got the coordination in the theory and the treated vessel function?
Yeah, I understood.
Anybody has any doubts?
No, ma'am.
No?
Ma'am, the force is called potential.
Water potential. Water potential gradient. That force. Water potential gradient. Okay? I showed the pic now. It's clear in that pic. Water potential gradient. Okay? How different water potentials are there between air, between leaves, cell walls, and the root. So because of the difference in pressure, water potential will be developed, which makes the water move against gravity. This moving in upward direction is definitely against gravity. So that against gravity is explained with that theory. Clear? Clear? Any doubts? Okay. Now, here when you take tracheates and vessels, this is the basic structural difference. They'll be having narrow lumen tracheates and vessels will be having broad lumen. Lumen means what? It's an inner space. The tracheates are having tapering ends and vessels will be having broad ends. And both are dead cells. Remember that point. And the cell wall is made up of lignin. Okay. Then, if you see the whole xylem tissue, this is how whole xylem tissue looks under a microscope. This we have taken a stem part, a bark part, for that example. Okay. So here these are the xylem vessels. These are the tracheids. Each line is a trachea. Okay. Each line. Various tracheids are there, surrounded by vessels which are having broader lumens. Then you are having fibers called xylem fibers. Okay. Xylem fibers are the fibers which we explained in sclerenchyma. In sclerenchyma, I told you the fibers are the thin elongated structures. Okay. They'll be having some economic importance like cotton seed fibers, jute fibers, hemp fibers. Okay, those are different and xylem fibers are different. Because xylem fibers are the one which will give only support to the xylem tissue. Xylem fiber cells, they just give support to the xylem tissue. Then you have parenchyma cells as a layer outside of the xylem tissue. The outer layer is xylem parenchyma. Parenchyma always stands for what? It's a ground tissue. Okay, fundamental ground tissue which helps in storage of food. That's all. Because here you find xylem tracheids. Each one is the tracheid, okay? Each line is the tracheid. And you have xylem vessels and xylem fibers. All the three are dead cells. All the three are dead cells. Tracheids are dead cells, vessels are dead cells, and even fibers are also dead cells. But the only living cell is xylem parenchyma. Okay? Why? Because it has to store food material in order to maintain the dead tissue intact. They are dead now, so they have to be maintained in tensile. So for that purpose, you are having the outer packing material. Parenchyma always stands for packing material. So it packs the whole xylem tissue intact, and parenchyma is the only living tissue here. Clear with xylem tissue? Any doubt with xylem tissue? It is clear. I'll ask a question regarding xylem.
Can you repeat once again in brief?
Okay. So this is the whole xylem tissue. Xylem tissue is made up of 4 different types of cells. Tracheids, xylem vessels, xylem fibers, xylem parenchyma. Okay. Now when you take tracheids, these are the narrow tapering cells inside the xylem tissue. Tracheids are the dead cells. Tracheids will help in transport of water and nutrients in upward direction from root to the stem tip. The xylem vessels, these are also dead tissue. Okay. So the xylem vessels, if you compare, they are having broad lumen. Means the central cavity is broad when compared to tracheids. There's the only difference between tracheids and vessels. Only structural difference. In other words, we call it as morphological difference. Okay. Now tracheids, how transport water and nutrients? The same way vessels also transport water and nutrients from soil to other parts of the plant. Then you're having the third type of cells in xylem called xylem fibers. Okay. Now when you take xylem fibers, these are also dead cells and they'll just associate with the tracheids and vessel elements and gives mechanical strength. Okay. So here in xylem, we are having 3 cells, dead cells. Tracheids are dead cells, xylem vessels are dead cells, xylem fibers are also dead cells. The only living cells of xylem are parenchyma cells. So this is the parenchyma layer, the outermost layer of xylem tissue. So wherever you find parenchyma word, it always stands for packing material. Packing material means what? It packs the inside cells because the tracheids, the vessels, and the fibers all are dead cells. So they have to be tensile and intact inside the tissue, which will be maintained by living parenchyma tissue that acts as the storage in xylem.